You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WYBC. As usual, we've got a ton of news and very little time to get through it all. The Senate, you may not have heard, once again confirmed a huge slate of nominations from the Trump team. They were confirmed today in the Senate all at once. Senator Jim Banks of Indiana, yes, the great state of Indiana, presiding over 107 nominees being confirmed at once. Again, this is the second time in our nation's history something like this has happened, and I think 107 is the record for sure.
The yeas are 51, the nays are 47. The nominations in block are confirmed. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered made and laid upon the table, and the president would be...
That's some pretty big stuff to see that many appointed at once. Again, even though the federal government is closed, so to speak, there is a lot that is still going on. Not just, paradise vacations and all other kinds of nonsense, even though, of course, there were some who had plans to go to a California winery on the Democrat side of the aisle. Now, this does bring us over to the Senate committee hearing today, because Attorney General Pam Bondi stepped before the Senate committee and all hell, in fact, broke loose. Now, not in the way that you would think, because normally when things become a major fireworks show, it's over a nomination fight or it's Republicans arguing over the level of work that has or hasn't been carried out. In this case, we're still reeling from the news yesterday, in which several FBI documents from the whistleblowing team in Chuck Grassley's office have revealed the Federal Bureau of Investigation, after the illegal document seizure by independent prosecutor Jack Smith, appointed by the Biden administration, spied on senators and, according to Josh Hawley, I want to make sure I get this right, tracked his location. Very, very, very illegal. Here was Hawley in the committee today.
Here's what I think needs to happen. Madam Attorney General, I think we need a special prosecutor to be appointed whose sole responsibility will be to get to the bottom of what has happened in every instance that I have just named. I think we need to know exactly who approved the wiretaps on United States senators, who knew about it, what agents were involved at DOJ or the FBI. I think we need to know exactly who signed off on the Catholic memo, the spying memo. Who was involved with it? How far did it go? I think we need to know exactly who authorized the prosecution of Mark Houck, who terrorized pro-lifers and tried to intimidate them. I think we need to know.
Now, I agree very much with Senator Hawley here. He's correct. When it comes to being hawkish about the exposure of information, Senator Hawley is one of the top senators who is more than happy to throw information out in front of the American people. And by the way, it should be noted here that a special prosecutor, while extremely expensive and time-consuming, is not a cure-all. It's not just a, Band-Aid you can slap on it and all of a sudden everything's fine and good to go. Prosecution must follow. And like it or lump it, this is something that the Department of Justice will need to prosecute if Americans are ever going to trust their institutions again. This brings us to another statement by Marsha Blackburn, Senator of Tennessee, who makes it clear that she wants, at the very least, Jack Smith disbarred from practicing law in any way, shape, or form.
Point soon, but we do know it's illegal. We do know it's a violation of our rights. And of course, Jack Smith is going to have to answer for this. I'm already working on a letter to the D.C. Bar, a complaint letter to file against him. He should be disbarred.
Well, let me ask you this, Senator. We're
real, genuine, prominent calls for action. Now we need something stronger than the letters. This brings us over to one of Americans' most often heard rebuttals, which is, well, what about the Epstein files? They're promising all of this transparency everywhere, and they're going and bragging about, oh, we're hearing about this in the FBI, oh, we're hearing about this in the CIA. Well, where's the Epstein stuff that you promised? And this brings us to a very bizarre kind of three-way sort of Mexican standoff. Someone call, Hakeem Jeffries. We may need him in just a second. And in this three-way Mexican standoff, you have Attorney General Pam Bondi, Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, and Dick Durbin of Illinois. Now, everyone on the interwebs is talking about an exchange we're going to get to with Dick Durbin here in a second. But far more interesting is the actual communications on record being disputed by the ranking Democrat member of the committee regarding the release of certain Epstein flight logs. Here is what the first part of that looked like.
And, you know, Senator Durbin, I find it very interesting that you refused repeated Republican requests to release the Epstein flight logs in 2023 and 2024. You fought that. Did you take money from Reid Hoffman, campaign donations, who was a huge Epstein friend? Why did you fight for years? Why did you fight to not disclose the flight logs, Senator Durbin?
I can tell you I did not refuse. One of the senators here wished to produce those logs, and I asked her to put it in writing, and she never did.
Yeah, I think Senator Blackburn would quarrel with you on that.
Well, I will quarrel with you as to read somebody that you mentioned I never heard of.
Okay, now here's where things get fun. Durbin says, well, I mean, I told Blackburn to put it in writing, and she never did. He doesn't mention her name. And then, you know, he alludes to her kind of indirectly, because senators and representatives get really chafed in the underdrawers about mentioning each other, because according to Robert's rules of super duper order in super structured parliamentary procedure, if you mention someone, they're allowed a rebuttal. So he tries to sneak his way around giving Marsha Blackburn an opportunity to bend him over her knee, as the old Tennessee mother likes to do. And she does, in fact, come for blood and points out, Durbin, you're not just lying. We got the receipts.
Mr. Chairman, since Senator Durbin referred to me, I would really appreciate the opportunity to correct the record.
Proceed.
Because Senator Durbin knows I repeatedly asked for those flight logs. I brought up the subpoena. You even shut down the committee because you didn't want that, and you know I submitted that in writing, and you continue to misrepresent that, and I am not going to let that record stand.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Senator Durbin.
He then essentially futzes around for another 30 seconds. That's humiliating to see for Durbin on the floor. That wasn't the worst time because, again, as the news headlines have carried, the Texas National Guard is now in parts of Chicago due to the attacks on federal agents upholding federal law. And I don't know what it is with whether it's senators in the various committees or, of course, representatives in the House committees or certain journalists or news network anchors on places like CBS with Margaret Brennan, for example, who have made the decision to thrust themselves onto the defensive pike set by someone in some kind of a testimony or an interview slot. But Dick Durbin does that here. He decides to take AG Pam Bondi to task over the Texas National Guard. It does not go well. And I mean, at all.
National Guard troops in my state, the word is, and I think it's been confirmed by the White House, they are going to transfer Texas National Guard units to the state of Illinois. What's the rationale for that?
Yeah, Chairman, as you shut down the government, you voted to shut down the government, and you're sitting here, our law enforcement officers aren't being paid. They're out there working to protect you. I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump. And currently, the National Guard are on the way to Chicago. If you're not going to protect your citizens, President Trump will.
I've been on this committee for more than 20 years. That's the kind of testimony you expect from this administration.
And then he proceeds to say, because they start, you ask them a simple question, and then they say a bunch of stuff and turn it into a personal attack. I'm sorry, miss me with that pearl clutching. No, you again, the side that continually calls every person to the right of Chairman Mao a Nazi to then get up and say, I've been in this committee for 20 years. I was here back when Abraham Lincoln, we were fighting against him. It's just not effective. And again, as we're going to see later on in the data, the Democrats have decided to really stake their entire electoral credibility here on fighting against the National Guard and federal law enforcement. Yeah, it's just not happening, Captain. We got to send the radio crew over to commercial. We're going to continue on the live stream because, yes, the National Guard is in Chicago and the tears are flowing freely. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, Greg Abbott, did in fact make 400 National Guardsmen available to the Trump administration to send to places like Portland and to Chicago. Now, you're being told, I'm sure already, that the reason that these National Guardsmen are being dispatched, deployed, parachuting into the cities is to take them over. And we're going to hear in a couple of seconds, J.B. Pritzker finished, for the day at Golden Corral, suggesting what he thinks the National Guard is there to do. And it truly makes Candace Owens' Israel conspiracy theories look like solid Harvard-based lectures, given the nonsense that Pritzker is spewing. So, that said, I wanted you to hear from the guy who is in charge of the Texas National Guard, what the Texas National Guard is actually there to do in Chicago. Here's Governor Greg Abbott of Texas.
National Guard, our elite National Guard in the state of Texas, began their deployment as they were loading on planes in Texas, boarding for flights to parts of the country where they will be able to safeguard ICE officials and other federal officials as they try to enforce the laws of the United States of America.
Now, producer Nick, just as a question here, I want to pick your extreme intelligence for a moment. Did he say anything in that entire description of what the National Guard would be doing that sounded like invading and holding down general crime in the city, like standing on every street corner? Is that what he said?
No, I did not hear anything to indicate that.
Wow, what a surprise. Because as the polling data is currently going right now, major polling outlets, we're going to talk about this with Rob Bluey here in a couple of more minutes, major polling outlets are asking Americans, what do you think about National Guardsmen being dispatched to provide law enforcement capability in every major city across the country? Which is a very poor way to ask Americans what they think of current policy. That's a very bad question. But regardless, what the Texas National Guard is going to do is very much within federal authority. That's it. It's very much within federal authority. Meanwhile, on the House side of things, because, of course, Hakeem Jeffries, he's got a new strategy. And the new strategy, after he's cried for 4.5 days about being made into a meme, Hakeem Jeffries has stepped up to the plate to essentially suggest that Obamacare is, I guess, the real problem here and that Republicans are responsible for it? Here you go.
First of all, that question is not even a ripe one because we're anticipating that this shutdown issue will be resolved well in advance of our next paycheck.
So he was asked very clearly what in the world he thought was going to be the cause of this shutdown. He then sidesteps the question and first says that he's, most concerned about kind of the paycheck side of things, which, it's Hakeem Jeffries, day ending in Y kind of a situation. And then Hakeem pivots another question later. It's very weird watching these kind of press conferences. There's an old British sketch in which the guy answers an interview question like one after the other, but he's like a question behind. That's really what it's like watching Hakeem Jeffries try to give press conferences. But Hakeem did end up standing in front of America today and tried to make the case that it's all Republicans' fault to blame here.
This fight is not about what Speaker Johnson or Republicans want to make this Trump shutdown and this fight about. It's not about Chuck Schumer, and it's not about Hakeem Jeffries. It's about the American people. Democrats are fighting for you, the American people. Working class Americans, everyday Americans, and middle class Americans. That's what this fight is all about. People who have been suffering under the extremism of Trump and Republican policies, hurting everyday Americans to reward their billionaire donors.
We got to swing back and pick up the radio crew from commercial because the alternative to whatever that mess in the Senate and the House was is pretty dire. It's really bad because there's no leadership. There's nothing left to offer the American people. And that is the breaking news from today. It's a pretty big red flag. We got to pick the radio crew up from commercial. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
the I'm just a girl because we're getting ready to talk about Kamala Harris. That's good. I like that, producer Nick. All right, it all boils down to Hefferson Davis, J.B. Pritzker, who's got some theories about the National Guard from Texas in Chicago they're something. And then Kamala Harris, who is just been reduced to the drunk aunt at Thanksgiving. Why bring up these two at all? Well, first of all, they are in the top 5 in the polls. They are the top 5 in the polls for Democrat choice in 2028. So let's hear what they have to say. We're going to get into some of the big response because right now what we've seen is a federal judge in Oregon try to combat anyone sending any National Guard into the state of Oregon. J.B. Pritzker theoretically could be the lead of the response against Trump sending Texas National Guardsmen into Chicago and the surrounding suburbs like Broadview. So first of all, he wants everyone to know that he's brave and he's going to put on his big boy pants and he's going to fight, which is great. That's what we really needed was a Gatorade commercial.
I refuse to let Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, and Gregory Bovino continue on this march toward autocracy. Their plan all along has been to cause chaos, and then they can use that chaos to consolidate Donald Trump's power.
The way that he says what the plan of the Trump administration is sounds a lot like a 4-year-old trying to tell you why they desperately need a cookie right before dinner. Well, we need this in order to try to get this done because it's really good. And then they're going to, when things are good, I like them. And that's the way, It's really weird.
They think they can fool us all into thinking that the way to get out of this crisis that they created is to give them free rein. Well, that plan will only work if we let it. The state of Illinois is going to use every lever at our disposal to resist this power grab and get Noem's thugs the hell out of Chicago.
Again, calling National Guardsmen thugs is a wild decision. And by the way, federal law enforcement as well, they do come from the country. We don't import them from North Korea. But best of luck to you on this. It is not a popular strategy with Americans. That was the most sane thing he said. Because then he got out there and he got out the tinfoil, he adjusted it on his forehead, and then breaks down his big, ultra, super duper conspiracy theory as to what the Guard is really there to do. Here you go.
At them, but they think they can get people used to the idea. And next year, I fear that what they're going to do is deploy these folks eventually to polling places and say they're protecting the vote. Donald Trump knows that without shenanigans and without these breaches of the Constitution, that he's going to lose the Congress. And if he loses, he's going to immediately, in the aftermath of the election, do what he said he might do in 2020, which is use the military to confiscate the ballot boxes.
Did you hear it? He just suggested that Trump is deploying the National Guard to Chicago to collect the ballot boxes and rig elections. What in the Hunger Games divergent teen fan fiction dystopian novel did M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong direct and produce this J.B. Pritzker interview?
And count the votes, claiming that there's fraud. Remember, he's called up all 50 states' election data.
He's called up election data. Oh no! Oh, clearly that's the. There you go.
To the Department of Justice because they want to review all 50 states for fraud, and they won't tell you exactly what they're going to do, but.
They want to tell you exactly what they're going to do. Oh no, not transparency. By the way, did you notice how rich it is that the governor of Illinois is trying to lecture the country about shady and corrupt elections? Chicago, the city where the dead vote higher than any other per capita agency. Not even the governor of hell can get that kind of turnout.
I fear that these are all connected. And
there he is. He's doing the meme. These are all connected. He's like doing the Sunny in Philadelphia, the red yarn meme. J.B. Pritzker, ladies and gentlemen. He has another theory as well, by the way. This is all just like the Nazis. They're coming. I guess that Illinois is going to be forced to annex Czechoslovakia or something. Here you go, JB.
What we're talking about is authoritarianism. We could have talked about Pol Pot. We could have talked about authoritarians across history.
You could only think of like one. we talk about Pol Pot. We could talk about the numerous other ones that there are.
I chose something I know very well. I helped to build a Holocaust museum. And what I know is in the early...
Did you just list Pol Pot and then talk about the Holocaust Museum?
Early days of the Nazi regime, they started slowly but surely taking away people's rights. And what we're seeing now is the very same thing. They've gone into cities now with the military. Think about that. In your life.
Oh, no. They went into cities with the military. You mean like has been done 70, 80 times? In fact, by the way, yesterday, I believe, is the anniversary of the National Guard being sent into Newcastle, Indiana, because there was a strike at the Perfect Circle manufacturing facility. And that's just one small instance of a number of National Guard into areas where there's civil unrest. It happens. Believe it or not.
Lifetime, have you ever seen anything like that, where the President of the United States is sending military or troops dressed as military, ICE and CBP, in camouflage with automatic weapons into our major cities?
What are they supposed to wear? Are they just supposed to show up in like graphic T-shirts or drag? I guess that's, Biden's military had, the dude in the skirts and the weird dog kink guy with the leather dog mask on.
I thought part of the issue with ICE was that they weren't wearing uniforms. Like that they were blending in with people.
They were blending in. Right. I mean, I'm going to be real. If they all showed up in like Agent Smith suits from The Matrix, that would be pretty freaking cool. But alas, that's enough of J.B. Pritzker and his jowls of justice here. I do want to talk about the drunk aunt, Kamala Harris. And she's on this book tour. And the only reason we're talking about her, to be clear at all, is not because she's a former vice president, but because she is a leading contender for 2028. And Kamala Harris is just desisting into madness, sad, allegedly drunk madness on various book tours around the country. So first of all, she showed up to Howard University, and there's this weird phenomenon, maybe, whenever Kamala Harris shows up to Howard University, they have to pretend that that's like a really big deal and get out the pomp and circumstance. And
come on, how?
they got it. Oh, she's at Howard University. Quick, everybody, this is exciting. And when she rolls up to talk to the students, I think that just taking random clips of someone speaking and going, oh, they're clearly drunk is kind of sketchy at best. This is not one of those times.
I am so proud of all of you. You know how privileged I feel to have been educated.
You know how Howard
educated at Howard University. There is so much about everything I have achieved, and I've been the first to do many things because of being here when I was your age, knowing that everything that I'm being told and can feel tells us we can be and do anything.
Everything I can be and can feel can tell you. It's that video of that kid going, when you have so much, you could do anything. And then again, of course, Kamala just trying to walk anywhere, just, very much, this Kamala Harris is just 3 sheets to the wind at all times. Radio crew, we'll see you guys in a second. We have a drunk aunt to deal with at Thanksgiving. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. All right, sorry guys, we have another helping of Kamala Harris because that was on September 29th. Since then, she has done yet more book tour appearances where she's gone full drunk aunt. By which I mean she's just trying to lace every sentence that she has with profanity as though it's impressive or that I guess that it illustrates her point. She's out of the joy that cometh in the morning. She's out of the significance of time. Now it's the significance of talking like Samuel Jackson. Here you go.
Because there's so much about this moment that is trying to make people feel like they've lost their mind.
By the way, I'm going to play this from the beginning. She starts out speaking normally, and then she does the Jasmine Crockett. She starts lilting into a little bit of the soul sister. The people start losing their mind, and then it's very weird.
And in fact, these motherfuckers are crazy.
One more time.
Because there's so much about this moment that is trying to make people feel like they've lost their mind. When in fact, these motherfuckers are crazy.
Yes, thank you, Kamala. Amazing. And then, of course, the young Gen Z girls in the crowd start clapping like otters. You are brave. And then she drops my favorite. This is from, I believe, earlier today. She starts talking about decency. Not usually something we associate with getting a little fresh on the language side of things, but Kamala Harris.
To have some level of concern and care, if not just basic f***ing curiosity.
I'm sorry, did she say generosity or curiosity?
Curiosity.
Curiosity? Ah, yes. Curiosity killed the cat, but bleeping curiosity brought it back. Wise words with Kamala Harris. I just don't know what they think this is going to do for the Democratic base. They're supposed to have leadership at this point in time. Hakeem Jeffries blaming it all on Republicans, blaming it on Obamacare that they voted in. All right, strange move. You've got Chuck Schumer, who is at this point so old and decrepit that the Speaker of the House has made a point, I guess earlier today, to make fun of the fact that Schumer was already in Congress when he was 9 years old.
Let me talk about the shutdown here real quick, and I promised you just 5 fast facts, 5 key facts, okay? I'm going to start with Leader Schumer's record because he is leading the opposition and he is the one telling the Democrats to keep the government shut down. Chuck Schumer has been in Congress for 44 years. He was first elected to the House in 1981. Just for reference, I was 9 years old. I was in the 3rd grade when Chuck Schumer came here to Congress.
This is a very rough way for me, by the way, to find out that Speaker Johnson is younger than my dad. That's a harrowing moment because Johnson's got, he's got gray hair. I'm confused. The Speaker of the House is supposed to be this like really old guy. Chuck Schumer at this point, though, apparently was, hitting on James Madison's wife or something. It's really strange.
Throughout his entire career, he has been very, very consistent about the necessity of keeping the government open until just now. In fact, I want to read to you an excerpt from 7 months ago, his floor speech on March 13th, 2025. This is Senator Chuck Schumer in March of this year. Quote, on the Senate floor, while the CR bill is very bad, the potential for a shutdown has consequences for America that are much, much worse.
Now, that kind of a game is going to come to a pretty quick close. And that brings us to the elections that are coming up before the midterms right here in November of this year. We got to bring the radio crew back to talk about it with Rob Bluey. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
We now go over to Rob Bluey, president of the Daily Signal, and a guy who's going to have to live under Attorney General Jay Jones if he is elected. So that scandal's just getting worse by the day. It seems like that those texts were not a one-off thing. Tell us what's going on.
Well, Tony, you're right. I do live in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I've lived there for a couple of decades now, and it's a situation that I think is on the minds of a lot of conservatives in Virginia. We know that historically, this is not a good year to be a Republican in Virginia. That's because the incumbent party in Washington typically loses these off-year elections in states like Virginia and New Jersey. Now, the recent news coming out about Jay Jones this week has prompted many people to speculate about whether or not this is kind of the Terry McAuliffe moment of 2025. Of course, 4 years ago, now Governor Glenn Youngkin was facing off against Terry McAuliffe when he made that foolish comment about parents not having the responsibility for educating their kids and putting that in the hands of others. Now you have an even more alarming situation where the candidate who's running for Attorney General, the chief law enforcement officer of the Commonwealth, has made these threatening comments And as you say, this doesn't appear to be a one-off situation. In fact, I thought it was quite interesting that both of the senators from Virginia, Mark Warner and Tim Kaine, said this is not the man that they know Jay Jones to be. You know, they've known
it never
him for
is.
decades. Right, exactly.
Oh, I'm shocked. Oh, man, I've known him for decades. He was always such a nice guy when he wasn't texting murderous rage. I mean, you know, that's supposed to be something he only does every other Tuesday.
I know. Well, Tony, you know, it's one of those things where it'll be interesting to watch about whether or not voters choose to go all Republican on their ballot, or maybe they will split the vote. Jason Miyares, who's running for Attorney General, of course, is an incumbent. Now, Virginia is unique in that the gubernatorial candidate cannot seek re-election. It's a one-term position. That's why Glenn Youngkin is not seeking re-election, but that does not apply to the Attorney General. So voters know Jason Miyares. They've lived under his leadership for the last 4 years. And so it's definitely going to be a close one to keep an eye on.
Well, and it's a really weird situation, maybe a perfect storm, perfect timing kind of a situation as well, because Terry McAuliffe making the horrible comments was when education and parents' rights were in the focus of voters' highest concerns in Virginia and the United States as a whole. And now what we're seeing in this Trump administration is a huge focus on law enforcement, on illegal immigration, on political prosecution, and the retribution and also the reconciliation of those things. Then we look at New Jersey, and then, of course, elections coming down the pike in Ohio as well. There's really a broader dissatisfaction with those that are being proposed as candidates on the Democrat side of the aisle in places where they're supposed to be really popular right now. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, Virginia, New Jersey, and Ohio, three important states to watch. I will mention that we have state correspondents from the Daily Signal in two of those locations, Virginia and Ohio. Our great friend Rebecca Downs, of course, doing a fabulous job covering Ohio. Elections there are a little bit farther out, but yeah, not only are there statewide elections happening in Ohio for governor and senator, but also there's concerns about whether left-wing forces in that state are going to bring another constitutional amendment, this time maybe on sexual orientation and gender identity. So, just some big questions to watch. As it pertains to New Jersey, this is an interesting race. So Donald Trump made significant gains in New Jersey in the last election. Now, it was still a 6-point margin in Joe Biden's favor, but that reduced it, I believe, from a 15-point margin in the previous election. And so, sorry, I should have said Kamala Harris's favor in 2024 versus 15 points for Joe Biden in the previous 2020 election. So Trump was able to make some significant gains, and Jack Ciattarelli, who's the Republican running for governor, is putting Democrats on notice because Mickey Sherrill, the candidate, is not exactly running the best campaign. There's concerns that not only is her message falling flat with people in New Jersey, but she's not reaching out to the types of groups that maybe Republicans have been able to make inroads. Specifically, talking about
where have we heard
Hispanic.
that before?
Yeah. So it's an interesting one to watch. I ultimately don't know if there's enough Republican momentum in the state, but at a time when you're hearing, at least from the national news media, that there's deep dissatisfaction with the Trump administration, it certainly doesn't seem to be playing out in these locations, Virginia and New Jersey, where you would expect it to.
That's what I wanted to dig into here, because there's this national narrative that's been kind of playing out, and even a lot of pollsters that I respect have been putting up a couple of polling analyses which suggest that, for example, Americans are very, very unhappy. 60%, 70% of Americans are very, very unhappy with National Guard deployments. And I look at the questions, and the questions are really poorly framed. They're asking if you like troops in the cities as like a rote idea, as if these aren't like individual circumstances. And then what we've seen is the alternative. Maybe I should say this. What we've seen is the simultaneous claim that gains Republicans made with certain communities in 2024. Now they're losing some of that support. I haven't seen any evidence that suggests, though, that the Democrats are making gains on any communities whatsoever since 2024. And am I reading that wrong? Is that kind of maybe a bigger death knell issue? What do you think?
I think you're reading it correctly. And first of all, 2 points. Number one, on the polling questions, our friend Scott Rasmussen always talks about how the polling questions can be biased and you have to look at what question was asked as you're interpreting the results. And this is why he does what he calls counter polling as an alternative to what so many national pollsters will do. Secondly, on your point about the Democrats and the issues, yes, Republicans still maintain an advantage on some of the most important issues. I think that that's because the Democrats have spent the better part of this year railing against Donald Trump, the person, without proposing any sort of solutions. And the American people can see through that. And so, yes, there are those who will respond. The left-wing base will respond very favorably to just like an anti-Trump argument. But I think if you're in the middle or if you're an independent voter and you're actually looking for solutions, you're looking to how do we improve the economy? How do my personal finances improve? How do we reduce crime on the streets? How do we, fix the illegal immigration problem in this country? I mean, you actually see the Trump administration doing things and taking steps that we might not have seen all of the outcomes yet, in part because the one big beautiful bill will not be fully implemented until 2026, we're definitely seeing things headed in the right direction.
So this is something I wanted to bounce off of you just real quick here at the end. I did this math myself. So if it's off, well, what do you know? So 39 states right now have considerable arguments over AI data centers and facilities for large-scale technology infrastructure. And there's a lot of concern with the American people how it's implemented. Is it going to affect the local water supply? Is it going to affect the power supply? And then, of course, the cost of power, the availability of power. Of these 39 states, California is not one of them. They have their own power and water issues, as you very well know. But what I see right now are Republicans taking both sides of that issue and arguing about this as effective policy proposals in every single one of the 39 states. I have looked every Democrat representative that I can find, every Democrat senator that I can find, not a one has proposed any policy one way or the other on this. That's bizarre. They're the other political party. Shouldn't they be galvanizing either the yay or the nay position on what is likely to be the biggest economic policy in the next 2 decades?
You would certainly think so, but you don't see it. There's a complete absence of it. I mean, even when you take a look at some of the national issues, that being one of them, but you can go down the list of the different issues, and the Democrats don't seem to even be offering an alternative. It reminds me of years ago when Mitch McConnell took a lot of criticism when Democrats had control and Republicans were. Remember, Rick Scott, senator from Florida, was saying we need to have an alternative agenda here, so that when we are in the position to govern, that the voters will understand what it is we were advocating for and what we wanted to do. And certainly Donald Trump made that case on the campaign trail last year. I think
delivering on promises that he made, the big ones, exactly. The small ones, even if it's recognizing a Native American tribe or something, he's delivering on those. It's so wild to see. Rob Bluey, president of the Daily Signal. Thanks for hopping on. Though I was supposed to be in Washington this week, we know you'll keep it battened down for us while I'm home and not away.
Thanks, Tony. We miss having you here. Good to see you.
All right. Now, before we moved on too further, it's important to say, radio crew, we do have to send you to commercial land because when we get back, Canada is officially in hyper-crisis mode. According to the National Bank chief a couple of moments ago, it's very, very bad. Officially, over in Canada. And the Carney visit with Trump today apparently did not help things for them. Did for us. We're going to talk about it. Radio crew, see you in a second. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. All right, now that the nerds are away over on the FCC required radio break, I wanted to show you. When I told Rob that the consistency at which Trump is actually delivering on promises is unprecedented and is very popular with Americans, that meaning his entire administration's kind of maverick blitz strategy here. I really wasn't trying to blow smoke. There is a new Harry Enton poll that I believe he posted after I did this interview with Rob, so nice to predict things that end up coming true, on Americans do support the idea of Trump delivering on promises.
Trump, you go back to October of 2024, 44% of the American public viewed him favorably. Now, despite everything, look at this, 43%, which is well within the margin of error of that 44%. And here's the thing to keep in mind. This was good enough to get Trump reelected back in 2024. And Donald Trump is basically at the same point here right now, which I think would surprise a lot of folks, especially a lot of folks on the left who very much disagree with a lot of what Donald Trump has done.
What do you
Now, to pause quickly there and point out that the idea that Trump has not lost support since he was elected, that is terrifying to a large amount of people over on the left who are often, by individuals like Nate Silver, who have pointed out the left is vastly overpolled. Meaning this, if I get a call midway through the day and I answer the phone and it's someone whose accent is, let's just say, call center-esque, I'm hanging up the phone, or I'm doing my personal favorite, which is putting my phone on mute and letting them try to get a hold of me and waste their call center time. So if they're calling to ask me what I feel on certain issues, I ain't answering that. Most people these days are not answering calls for polls. It's not yet revivified in the American public. Who does love answering questions about polls? That would be kind of the suburban kind of class in Generation X to the boomer generation, according to the data we have on who answers polls. So it's a pretty incredible phenomenon that even among that class, Trump hasn't lost any support whatsoever, despite what you're told daily is that Americans, they blame Trump on the big, back, beautiful, better, super duper bill. They blame him on the shutdown. Just not seeing it.
Is underneath that and driving that. Why is he basically the same?
Okay, to quote the esteemed caller Dennis Green, the former head coach in the National Football League, Donald Trump is who the voters thought he was. What are we talking about here? Well, is Trump doing what he promised in the 2024 campaign? Yes, 52%. The majority of Americans say that Donald Trump is doing what he promised, compared to 48% who said no. So what essentially is going on here is the voters expected all of this from Donald Trump. The majority did, and that is why his favorable rating, simply put, has not really moved all that much compared to where it was a year ago. Trump is basically doing what the American people thought that he was going to do. Indeed, if you look at the numbers.
As Harry Enton does. Now, I agree with a lot of Harry Enton's takes. Some of them, I'm not always, just taking, anything anyone says at face value, whether they be, the Harry Enton crew or the Scott Rasmussen crew. Real Clear Polling is usually the aggregate that I keep a lot of trend tracking lines on. That's, by the way, where I got the stat where I said that 39 different states and commonwealths here in the country right now are having intensive debates on things like AI and data centers. We're got to bring the radio crew back. I am apparently wildly over time getting a notification. Sorry. We'll be right back. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Just a curbside prophet with my hand in my
I got up today getting ready for this panel that I do every Tuesday. And the kind of assignment list, the things I needed to be prepared to talk about, was Mark Carney coming to meet with President Trump. And I thought, wow, big freaking yawn. I'm looking forward to kind of some mealy mouth. Oh, you're good, but we're not happy. Oh, you're good, but we're not happy. Kind of nothing. What I did not expect was the entire Canadian economy to finish nosediving like a kamikaze pilot at the end of the Second World War. Mark Carney, who I will remind all of you, the world banker, super progressive heir to Justin Trudeau from the Liberal Party, he ran entirely on elbows up to Donald Trump. Elbows up, hockey term. And but I don't just mean that he ran like, he ran on being tough against Donald Trump. No, I mean, we're talking tweets where he interviewed Canadian hockey players and then did this like emotional Kamala Harris pivot about keeping their elbows up. And is Canada really going to be around?
What are the two seasons in Toronto? Winter and construction. Wow. You really are Canadian. Yeah. But let me ask you, Mr. Prime Minister, will there always be a Canada? There will always be a Canada. All right. Elbows up. Elbows up.
Elbows up, meaning like defend, keep America, we're ready to fight. We're ready to put it down. And then it says Canada strong for the buzzer, people who are listening and not watching. And then it's like a vote Liberal election kind of a poster. I hate to tell you that this wasn't a one-off thing. He was at concerts doing like the Taylor Swift cringy. By the way, this may be the gayest political move. Like, all right, everybody, elbows up. Yeah, elbows up. Like, just stop it. This is really lame. He shows up to the White House now today on October the 7th and goes up to the president and immediately says, "Hey, Mr. President," and he does like a little girlish giggle. It's like, I wore red for you today, Mr. President. I wore red for you, and Trump's like, yeah, that's nice. And it really does go downhill for the Canadians from that point. For the Americans, it goes wildly uphill. And I was told that Trump was going to cut off the allies, Canada was going to be in the arms of China, and that everything was going to fall apart. Oh, he ruined everything. Here is the liberal prime minister, the extremely, has a transgender daughter, prime minister of Canada, who is essentially walking right in and just playing right into all of Trump's kind of pomp and circumstance. And, you know, he's kissing the boots. He's kissing the ring. Here's Mark Carney. He's got Trump fever.
Mark, it's an honor to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. If I may, you kindly hosted me and some of my colleagues a few months ago, and I said at the time, you are a transformative president. And since then, the transformation in the economy, unprecedented commitments of NATO partners.
By the way, he said that huge changes and growth in the economy. The Canadian economy, since Trump's election, has plummeted. It has plummeted. Unemployment is the highest Canada has seen it in 35, 40 years. It is a brutally bad economy in Canada right now.
To defense spending, peace from India, Pakistan through to Azerbaijan, Armenia, disabling Iran as a force of terror. And now, and I'm running out of time, but this is in many respects the most important.
The merger of Canada and the United States.
That wasn't where I was going. On the
elbows up for Canada, huh? Elbows up. Yeah, you're gonna fight, huh? No, you're not. No, you're not. And by the way, we'll get to this in a second. This is why Trump wanted Carney over Poilievre. I questioned it at the time because if I was Canadian, I would want Pierre Poilievre of the Conservatives to be the guy who would be my prime minister, given the choices. If you are competing with Canada and restructuring the trade and economic structures that prop certain parts of the economies up, well, then you really don't want someone who is going to fight for Canada, and he really doesn't. And Trump, now that Carney is bending, and he is bending at the waist for Donald Trump, and at this point, whatever the president suggests. So then Trump, of course, does whenever he gets what he wants, then everything is good. He's like, oh, he's a great guy. I love him. I've always loved him. In fact, I thought he was a really good looking guy. And here we go. Trump saying that Carney is a good man. Media presses it back on him like a smidge, kind of a clarifying question. Gets another huge laugh from the crowd, understandably.
Canada, let me put it this way. I can tell you this because I deal with lots of leaders all over the world. He is a world-class leader. He's a man that knows what he wants, and I'm not surprised to see that he won the election and won it substantially, and I would think he's more popular now. He's a good man. He does a great job, and he's a tough negotiator. So
then what's holding things up? If he's a great man and you want to do a deal with Canada, why aren't you?
Because I want to be a great man, too.
Now, everyone laughs. And again, it's funny. It's a funny line. The president is an entertaining and funny guy. I'm not breaking any ground there telling you that. We all understand that. But the intellect behind that line there, you guys want to talk about the 4D chess? I don't really believe in the 4D chess thing. I'm much more apt to believe in just kind of people who are playing checkers. This is a chess move. I'll go one step above checkers here by making it clear that if you go along with what I say, I will then acknowledge that it is necessary you fought for your people. He's done that, by the way, with primary opponents since. He's done that with DeSantis. Of course, we've seen President Trump used to be at odds with Rubio. Now he's the Secretary of State. We've seen Trump essentially pivot around and saying, look, you fought. I understand. I get it. You're a good man. And they say, well, if you think he's a good person, well, then why don't you just give him everything that you want and sign a deal? That's what the media believes. When they say, oh, you're a good person, that means I give you everything I want. No. And Trump responds, no, I want to be a great man too. I'm going to go to bat for my country. And that brings us to the big problem with the why don't we just be super nice to Canada, guys, kind of argument in these negotiations. In an economic bargaining agreement, when you have had decades old agreements, and tariff processes and economies that are no longer what they were decades ago. The manufacturing centers of the United States that produce certain types of products are not in the same places with the same materials or the same products that they were 40 to 50 years ago. And that's not coming back. It's not. Now, you can grow new manufacturing and new infrastructure. That's where the negotiations are now occurring. And someone is going to win. Someone's going to lose. That's hard for people to hear because there's this like magical unicorn fairy tale wishland where people believe that, well, if we just work together, everybody can be a winner and everyone will be. No, it doesn't work like that. America first. It is. And any elected leader should put Indiana first. Governor Braun, the governor of my state of Indiana, should put Hoosiers first. I don't see any other I'm electing you to represent me. Why wouldn't you then put me as your highest priority? It makes sense. And I would expect Carney to fight for Canada. Again, the reason Trump didn't want Pierre Poilievre to be the Prime Minister of Canada is not because Pierre Poilievre is not a great guy who would fight for Canada better than Mark Carney or Justin Trudeau. It's precisely because Trump wanted to deliver for Americans that he ended up nuking Poilievre's chances, I would say, at being the prime minister. And you can get this in a couple of different ways. I have to send the radio crew off in a second. I'll play this last clip here of Carney talking about the money heading over to the United States. I think it's a good cap off for that.
We are the largest foreign investor in the United States. $500 billion in the last 5 years alone, probably $8 trillion in the next 5 years if we get the agreement that we expect to get.
Radio crew, we'll see you guys soon. We know you have to head off for commercial. We're going to continue on the live stream. Go to the live stream. Trust me. There's far more to this Canada stuff. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, now that they are off to commercial land, Carney says, look, we've invested a ton of money in the American economy. And because we are so close, and the economies are so close together geographically and economically, as well as industry function-wise, that the president articulated in this White House negotiation kind of press briefing in the Oval Office, in the room that appears to have like the Mexico yellow tint when they record it. Like how anytime Hollywood records something that happens in Mexico, they like apply like a urine filter over the screen. The Oval Office cameras, some of them appear, I guess there's like a Canadian broadcasting company we got a lot of these clips from. They have that same filter. So if you ignore the bladder disease that the camera crew from Canada has, Trump makes it pretty clear that not everybody's really going to be able to win, but Canada is in fact investing in the American economy. Here you go.
Canadians are refusing to go to the U.S. The numbers are down like 23% in the first 7 months of the year. What do you say to Canadians that don't want to go to the U.S. now because of your 51st state talk, because of the trade war, the tariffs, and the fear of also being detained at the border?
That, and Americans don't want to buy cars that are made in Canada. You know, I mean, we have the same conflict. So there isn't. It's something that will get worked out. There's still great love between the two countries, but you know, American people want product here. They want to make it here. Detroit was emptied out and moved to Canada, moved to Mexico, moved to other places, not just Canada. And now they're all moving back, you know, they're moving back. We have, right now, I was just telling Mark, we have 17 trillion, but it's really much higher. That was as of a couple of months ago. We have over $17 trillion being invested now in the United States. As an example, Biden, he was the worst president we've ever had, but they had less than $1 trillion in 4 years. We have more than 17 trillion in 8 months.
So these are called long-term commitments. That's what the president is referencing there. The president makes it very clear. It is one of the times Trump, kind of talking off the record but answering the question directly, gives a rather succinct, fundamental, what I would almost call a moral framing of an argument. The first time that I ever really heard the president do this was in that Joe Rogan interview during the campaign when he talked about California water management and real estate. And all of a sudden, like his voice changed and he talked about something that as a real estate developer, he's got a lot of expertise in. What you heard from Trump there for a couple of seconds was Trump essentially framing back into the business negotiator guy that really doesn't appear in front of the cameras very much anymore. And that's for very good reason. And Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, and Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of staff for the White House, are doing an excellent job making sure that kind of the press coverage face of the Trump administration is kept apart from the actual negotiation part of the Trump administration. You want that. You don't want negotiations out in front of everyone all the time, because then everyone knows your bottom line and you're screwed. But you get a glimpse of it right there when Trump says, look, we like Canada. We do. You saw this in the early 1900s, by the way, when Teddy Roosevelt, who had some disagreements with the Brits, after we arbitrated a negotiation between the United Kingdom and it was either Colombia or Venezuela. Don't quote me on that one, but it was one of the two. And the argument was over a border dispute. And America arbitrated the border dispute. And from that point forward, Americans had really decent relations with the United Kingdom on a state level. During the Civil War, they were really bad. The British constructed a warship or two for the Confederates. I know they constructed the CSS Alabama. I think they were working on another. So up until the 1900s, America wasn't a fan of UK. But around 1900s, Germany starts getting excited, and Americans realized that they had a lot more in common with the United Kingdom and how she built her empire than with the Germans and how they were building their empire. Because the American empire, coming out of the Spanish War, the Philippines, Cuba, etc., we had a lot more in common with the UK. Didn't mean we didn't compete economically. Absolutely did. Why am I telling you all of this? Teddy Roosevelt and William McKinley made it clear to the American people, we're going to compete with the United Kingdom in a lot of ways. Absolutely. But we are allies culturally. Neither of those two things has to destroy the other. Trump made that case today. I like Mark Carney. I like Canada. He says that about every leader who works with him. But the American people like the Canadian people. We will defend Canada in the diplomatic sense. They are our little brothers. We will absolutely protect them from Chinese encroachment, from anyone off of their shores diplomatically. I believe I would have no problem whatsoever seeing American forces rescuing Canadians held in kind of an Iranian embassy hostage situation just as much as a citizen of the United States. But economically, we all cannot be winners. We can try to give Canada a good deal, but you can't all be winners. And right now, Trump is trying to rebuild a large part of the American economy. And Carney caved because, as was articulated by Mike Leon, who's a Democrat strategist that I'm often paired with on a panel today, he made the case very clearly that at some point, Americans are going to expect to get the better end of the deal. Canadians are not. And because America owns all of the cards, we are the national defense of Canada. We are mostly their military. Because we are also the guarantor of their diplomatics. We are the guarantor of their currency. We are the guarantor of their reserve currency, because we are their reserve currency. Because we are the guarantor of their electrical grid, which can be backed up on the United States, as funny as that sounds. And then, of course, you have the economic, the civil, the medical, all these other linking points. The U.S. owns the cards. And so when Trump levies that forward and Carney has to bow, Trump doesn't just do that in a pretty rough way. It's essentially unilateral what Carney gives up. And it has sent the Canadian economy spiraling because Carney didn't build anything up in the meantime. This is the real secret to the matter. Carney could have given a lot to Trump if he was also building Canada up at home. Carney hasn't built anything up at Canada at home. He made his entire policy economically and state-wise flipping Trump off. Maybe we're going to give Palestine statehood, eh? That's not an economic policy that puts food on the table. Unemployment's high. And now, according to a national bank chief economist in Canada, Canada's deficit has now surged to $100 billion. For the gross domestic product of Canada, that's freaking enormous. You're well on your way to an Argentinian situation there. And by the way that Mark Carney was roasted today by the left and the right from Canada and kind of the Western world was incredible to see, because Carney was their guy. He was going to stop Trump, and he, unlike Polyev, who was totally going to kiss up to Trump, Carney was the man, right? He's got that Obama liberal backbone. Obama has no backbone. Carney has no backbone. From the Canadian Parliament today, conservative leader Pierre Poilievre made this point. I want you to hear the conservative argument in Canada, because there's a hard truth we're going to have to talk about after that.
Mr. Speaker, all the hyperventilating in the world will not change the fact that the Prime Minister casually said in the Oval Office today, he bragged that $500 billion Canadian investment dollars have left for the states in the last 5 years, and then promised that $1 trillion more will leave in the next 5 years. That'll mean mines closing in Quebec and opening in Pennsylvania. It'll mean mills closing in BC and opening in Washington State, factories closing in Ontario and going to Michigan. Why is it that the Prime Minister sells out Canadian workers, Canadian jobs, and Canadian investments in the White House?
Now, here's the hard truth. Everything that he said is factually correct. And if you were a Canadian, I would wholeheartedly believe that you want Pierre Poilievre and the tough negotiation that Canada needs to move forward. Now, I will say concurrently that Pierre also knows that opening up Canada's natural resources, reducing restrictions, and unleashing the Canadian economy would make it so that you don't have to fight the United States over certain things. But because Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau, for ages and ages before him, decided to put a choke on the Canadian economy, I mean a choke in the engine sense, like to really thin the amount of gasoline or the amount of air intake that is able to reach the engine, well, then there's really few resources to choose from. And so Trump coming in and saying, look, well, then I want some fair deals. We're not going to prop up your economy. Your economy is your business. And you know what? If you have a lot of workers that are unemployed, they can come work in the United States and we'll make the money. And Carney essentially did, yes, dear. And Pierre Poilievre is rightly pissed. I absolutely understand that. Now, as an American, I'm really pleased with the Trump administration. I am. Because if Carney is going to screw over Canada, then I want Trump to come out on top. I do. In the same way that if President Xi, the dictator of communist China, is going to screw over the Chinese, then I want Trump to get the best deal out of it. I do. Because right now, I live in a Rust Belt area of the state. In my tri-area of towns that I grew up in, Newcastle, Muncie, and Anderson, Indiana. Muncie, home of Ball State. You may also know it's Parks and Rec's Pawnee turned upside down. Trivia fact that doesn't matter. In that little triangle of eastern central Indiana towns, all of the major industrial and manufacturing hubs for those three cities that were powerhouses from the 50s to the early aughts, all of those have closed down. Chrysler in Newcastle, Delco Remy in Anderson, BBB in Muncie, Westinghouse in Muncie. There used to be so many manufacturing facilities near Muncie, Indiana. Now I think one of the only major manufacturing facilities left is a rail company manufacturing facility. There's like nothing in Anderson. There's a Nestle factory halfway down 69, and Newcastle has a screen manufacturing company, which is a local industry nearby, and they have a lunch meat facility. That's the manufacturing, and it's been wiped away. And what's coming in to eat it on the heels are these AI data centers that are buying up the corporate land. They're sucking up the power. They are jacking up the prices of local areas. And yeah, I'm going to be honest. I am more than happy to have a conversation about free market trade economics. And if we just open the borders economically, it'll all be fine. No, it doesn't work like that, because not everyone is playing by your rules. Not everyone is playing by the high-handed auspices and the moral high horse of the United States. And when Trump comes in and goes, well, if you guys are using tariffs, why do we need to take this? That's very appealing. As a negotiation tactic at the very least. And now here we are. I haven't seen the big inflation spike from tariffs. Maybe it's coming at this point. Doesn't look like it. Trump comes in and he gets other countries to essentially cough up investment manufacturing centers that they have stolen from the United States, either by providing low wages or providing kind of corporate nest account and security guarantees. Canada has done that. Canada, the United Kingdom, Ireland have provided essentially little nesting grounds for American companies to leave. They don't offer that for companies moving from France to the UK or from France to Canada. Only companies that leave the United States and went to several Western European, Scandinavian, and some South American nations. Got these special little tax havens. They didn't really have to pay any taxes. You never hear, by the way, Obama or Hillary or old decrepit Otto Pen Joe talking about that. These are some real facts on the ground. And I'm just going to make this clear. That's why J.D. Vance wins 2028. That's why. That's why. AOC, who I still believe to be the likely contender for 2028, she doesn't have a prayer against that. She doesn't. The reason is because she has no idea how international trade works. She has no idea what the policies are around the world. And as someone in broadcasting, I can tell you there is nothing I fear more than having to learn something in a half an hour. Producer Nick can back me up on that. He has to deal with my nervous fits when I have to learn something that I don't really have any bearing on, but you got to learn it because it's the news. AOC going up against Vance in a general election. Vance has a very wide general knowledge of how international policy and trade works. AOC does not. AOC has no idea how many branches of government there are in the United States. And is now, by the way, making a huge scene of apology and self kind of justification over what? Her policies, not having anything to provide the Democrat Party, no real leadership. No, she got called out for making fun of the height of Stephen Miller. We talked about this yesterday. So now she's out with a sort of half apology video and I guess also rocking the Harry Potter glasses.
I want to express my love for the short king community.
Wait a minute, those aren't Harry Potter glasses. Those are my glasses. AOC's wearing my glasses. I feel offended. She's reaching out to the short king community. Okay.
I want to express my love for the short king community. I don't believe in body shaming. I am talking about how big or small someone is on the inside.
Oh, piss off. Get out of here. That's so freaking ridiculous. I know I said that he's like 4'10" and that's why he has short man syndrome, which, you know, I mean, you want to play the game, fine. All right, whatever. But suggesting, oh, well, I actually care about how large or tall or small or blue or green or nice and mean someone is on the inside. Yeah, survey says, nice try, AOC.
Like, for example, I have no idea how tall Andrew Tate is. No idea.
Great. I just want to let everyone know I have no idea how tall AOC is. I don't know. But if you're dating AOC or engaged or married or whatever, I think there was some dispute around her relationship status federally legal-wise at the moment. Not like Ilhan Omar bad, but, you know, like the regular kind of bad. I don't follow her Facebook relationship status. If your girl is walking around saying, you know, I just want to talk about how tall these random guys are, that's weird. That's weird. My wife really does not appreciate it. When I am like, well, you know, her features, I don't do that. I don't go there and be like, well, you know, Nancy Mace. Nope, that's a dumb decision. AOC, Andrew Tate's height, I guess.
At all. But that guy looks to me like 5'3", like 5'3", 5'4".
What are you talking? I'm going to be the first to say I am really bad at guessing like the average age or weight or height. You know, there's all of those old clips in the sitcoms that I guess is just a natural ability some people have. There's a Golden Girls episode that came across Instagram because I don't watch Golden Girls. You don't believe me, but that's okay. Where Betty White, I guess, called in. There was like a hotel that was being robbed or whatever. She acted all stupid and then picked up the phone, said, yeah, there's a guy who's like in his mid-20s. He's this exact height, guessing this exact poundage. I don't do that with people. I am more likely to compare you to something culturally, though. You can say, Stephen Miller, he kind of looks like Mini-Me from Austin Powers. See, that would be good. And it would be funny. He would find that meme funny as well. But AOC doesn't go there because she's got no real sense of humor. So she's like, I guess he's like 5'3" or 5'4" and 2/4 and 3/8.
Whereas physically, men of smaller stature can come across. They are spiritually 6 foot. If you're a good dad, if you stand with women, if you're not belittling immigrants, you're like, you know, 6'3" spiritually. I don't know. Am I being problematic?
Am I being problematic? No, you're just dumb. spiritually, emotionally, considerably. If you're like an Aquarius Scorpio and Mercury is in Gatorade, then you might be 6'2", but it really depends on the immigrants. She's still making it out to be that short is bad for her and tall is good for her. Like, she did the same thing. She just said, well, I mean spiritually, you're fat and ugly. Oh, man. I tell you what, of all of the representatives, none are as highly regarded as AOC. None at all. Okay, one more before we send everyone off for the evening. This is a little bit of bonus goodness. Remember Maxine Dexter? You're like, who the heck is that? I don't know who that is. Yes, you do. Maxine Dexter is the lady who couldn't curse, but she wanted everyone to think that she could. You'll know.
I've been told I have 30 seconds, so I am going to tell you that we do have to. I don't swear in public very well, but we have to Trump.
Okay, that's great. We have to bleep Trump. That's good old Maxine there. Excellent. Good old Maxine Dexter from Oregon's 3rd Congressional. Stellar. Well, she's back. No, she's not back to share with us more swear words. She's back to do what the Democrats do best. And that is either A, burn down cities, or B, music. That's right.
This land is my land. From California to New York Island. From the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made.
There's the Ukrainian flag.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California.
There's an old dude there that looks like a lemon. He's just boogieing down on the walker. Good on you, man. Pause it. All right. There you go, guys. The Democratic Party. That's the base. This is the base of the Democratic Party. Now, I'm not going to guess the heights of these individuals, physically or spiritually. But I am going to point out, when your entire constituency is old white people, I'll be fair here. It looks like a good smattering of the upper end of Gen X into the full boomer range in this instance. Nothing wrong with being that age, but when you are dressing like you should be, I don't know, not in that age range, and then they've got like 15 ukuleles there. Somebody had some bongos. I'm pretty sure somebody was playing a bong, which, Portland. Incredible. Portland is home. Maxine Dexter said Portland is not a war zone. Now, I thought this would be fun for the gang. 2.5 months ago, someone was stabbed in the exact spot they're filming that video. Why am I laughing? Because it's the person who got stabbed who pointed that out on social media. And it's like, I bled there. The lack of self-awareness is just fantastic. With that stuff said, we've had a full show. So to you out there in the great wide world, whether you're in Chirac or Canada or these great United States of America, have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Take care.